Welcome back to the Get Good Scrub podcast. It's your boy, Cool Guy Fonz, joined by our very own Gray Fox, Marc the Cyborg.
Yes, I got a good one this week. That's amazing too because X-Ray Girl and I just finished Metal Gear Solid 4 on our Metal Gear X-Ray series and did the intro for Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Not Gray Fox, but it's the Metal Gear game where you get to play as a cyborg ninja the entire time. And gotta admit, it was a little hard getting the PC port to run the way I wanted it to in 4K on that TV. It kept on boxing into a little screen. Downloaded one mod, got myself a borderless window middleware app, and we're good to go now. So next week's episode, for the audience, it looked fine. It's just for me, it was like a quarter of the screen, and it was driving me up the wall because that's a game that really demands a lot of precision reflexes.
I have no doubt you get the best quality whenever you desire it.
See, the bad thing is when I don't, it drives me insane.
Yeah, I know. We got some big news in video games this week. We just had EA Live with some cool and not so cool announcements. In financial news, we got Tencent acquiring British developer Sumo Group. But first, let's start with Death's Door, a game you started playing, developed by Acid Nerve, a two-person team out of Manchester. Getting some good reviews, 86% on Metacritic and 9 out of 10, mostly across the board. Sounds like it's a classic Zelda-like action-adventure game, but what'd you think about it?
I'm really liking it so far. I was actually playing it right before we started recording. I kind of just wanted to talk about it to like put it on people's radar because Death's Door is one of those games that could very easily fall off the map especially because New World, that Amazon RPG, the MMO came out, and it's getting a lot of headlines, mostly that it's actually been destroying my video card, so thank God I'm not an MMO player. But I don't know, I just kind of wanted to highlight Death's Door because for a team that's made up of two people whose previous game sort of seems more like a two-person team. I played it entirely on PlayStation Vita, called Titan Souls, and it was this really neat boss rush game where there wasn't any enemies and not really a lot of puzzles, but there were kind of like environmental puzzles to get to the bosses, sort of like Shadow of the Colossus. Like you just have to figure out where to go, get to the boss, fight the boss, and then once you completed a certain amount of bosses, you can kind of move on to the next area. But it was very low fidelity pixel art, very like NES style, maybe a little bit of Super NES. Death's Door, though, is gorgeous. Like it's a beautiful game. The environments aren't overly complex in the way they're designed, but the animation is really, really smooth. It's running at 120 frames a second, at least on PC. I'd imagine the Xbox Series X version also has a 120 FPS mode because Xbox seems to be pushing that stuff, which is making me so happy. Like the fact that 120 FPS for console games is becoming a thing, it warms my heart, really does. And I've really enjoyed playing it so far. The combat isn't overly complex, but the controls are airtight. Like it's one of these games that just feels really great to play, and every time an enemy hits you, you know that it was your fault. You're just like, oh yeah, I really dropped the ball on that dodge right there, or I shouldn't have gone for that powerful attack. And yeah, it's been really nice. You play as this cute little raven guy with what looks like a Sith lightsaber. You got this like glowing red sword. It's pretty sweet. I recommend it. For $20, you really can't go wrong. That's 20 Canadian too, so I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's probably cheaper in
$14.99 for Americans. Yeah.
It looks like it's just like a 9-10 hour game. Also, like the boss battles aren't Souls-like difficult, but like you said, like if you don't dodge at the right time, you're gonna get hit. And even the puzzles, it seems like it's manageable, like very memorized, focused, but nothing that you need a strategy guide for. Just fun.
And you have to do these things like light these incense burners that are around, and once you get past, I think, the second boss, these puzzles start coming up. And for the longest time, I was like, man, like I don't really understand what to do. You've also got this little bow and arrow that shoots these little glowing red laser arrow looking things. And I realized that it was a thing that you can do in Titan Souls, where if you shoot an arrow through fire, your arrow lights on fire. And what you basically had to do was find a little bonfire or something, then shoot your arrow through the fire and then into the incense burner, and it'll light that. And then from there, you can shoot your arrow through that incense burner to light other ones. And it's like, oh, this is pretty sweet. Oh, the other thing to note about Titan Souls is the kind of hook there in the boss rushes is you have one arrow and telekinesis. So you have an arrow that you can shoot, and then you can kind of use the force to bring it back. Every single one of the bosses dies in one hit too. So the trick is finding out, okay, how do I get this arrow into that boss's weak spot? And once I figure it out, I can just get it in there and it kills the boss instantly. But it's just sort of about figuring out, okay, this guy's got like a shield that comes down, or one guy is in a block of ice and there's like a little flame that comes up out of the ground when the boss's block of ice is on these switches. So the trick is when the ice block is on the switch and the flame comes up, you shoot your arrow through the flame, sets your arrow on fire, and then if you hit the boss, it starts decreasing the ice cube until the boss is just exposed. So these two guys, this like dev team, Acid Nerve, they're called, right?
Yeah, Acid Nerve.
They're super talented, and I honestly think they deserve support. And being a small gaming podcast, I feel that we should, every so often at least, highlight some small development teams that might need a little bit of more press than they're getting.
On PC and Xbox One, no Switch?
I mean, I believe, actually, I don't even know if it's on Xbox One. It might just be the next gen consoles. It's probably on Xbox One, though. I'd have to check that. But no, right now it's not on Switch or PlayStation, which is a bit of a bummer. It's also a little bit strange because it's not on Game Pass. And you would figure that if Microsoft was going to lock it down as any kind of exclusive, they'd be doing it for Game Pass. But if it's not on Game Pass, it's just sort of like, well, why keep this game from Switch and PlayStation players then? Because I don't think anyone's buying an Xbox Series X to play Death's Door. I mean, it's a great game, but
you know what system it'll be great on? The new Steam Deck.
Steam Deck, yeah. Honestly, yeah, that's like the perfect kind of game for the Steam Deck or the Switch, really. For like, to be fair,
yeah, that's why I asked.
This Nintendo Switch.
Moving on, we have in financial news. Tencent, currently the largest video game vendor in the world, has agreed to purchase all outstanding shares of the Sumo Group for $1.2 billion. They already owned 8.75%, but the deal would make them complete owners. And other companies that Tencent already owned 100% of is Riot Games, Funcom from Norway, Leiyu from Hong Kong, and Sharkmob from Sweden. They're also majority owners of Supercell out of Finland and 40% of Mark's favorite storefront, Epic Games.
Yep. And they own a chunk of Platinum Games as well, which unironically is one of my favorite developers. And when I found out that Tencent was investing in them, I was like, A2 Kamiya-san, A2.
From what I hear, they don't really put their noses in other people's business. They just like owning them, from what I've been reading. So like usually when they buy outright companies, it's mostly just for funding. And I really feel like Tencent just wants to be the biggest company in the world, which they are on track to be at some point in the near or distant future. But they also own small percentages of Activision Blizzard, which is going through its own troubles right now, and Ubisoft. And I just found out they own Discord too, like 5 to 10% of it, but still like
a good chunk of it. Yeah. Well, for a company like Discord that I don't believe they've done their IPO yet, like initial public offering, which I hear that when it does, it's probably going to be a good idea to put some change into Discord. That's not a stock tip though. I'm not a finance guy at all. Talk to my brother.
Not financial advice.
Yeah, no, not financial advice at all. I'm terrible at investing. I lost probably about $1,400 in crypto over the last month.
Oh man!
But to be fair, I was up 1,000, so I've technically only lost $400. But still, like losing any money sucks.
Yeah.
I really wish I got rid of my chain link when I had about $2,000 worth of it, because now I've only got 600 worth. But anyways, the trick about Tencent, the thing that makes Tencent buying companies outright, especially, or even putting significant investments into them, as opposed to Sony doing it or Microsoft doing it or Nintendo doing it, is Tencent is the Chinese company. And before people start calling me racist, nothing wrong with Chinese people. In fact, X-Ray Girl is half Chinese, so I'm married into a half Chinese family. But the Chinese government, there's no such thing as a totally private Chinese corporation. There's only one political party in China, which means every single Chinese corporation is in some way an extension of the Chinese Communist Party. So if you think about it, if you can pick whatever political party you dislike the most in your country, imagine if they were the only political party there and then started buying companies that you like. And knowing that even though they seem like they're really hands off, at any moment they could be like, oh yeah, now we're totally changing all this stuff, or we're getting rid of all this stuff, or we're adding all sorts of weird propaganda into these things, or we're going to make sure that none of your products can ever say anything that goes against the CCP company line. So as much as I'm not ultra passionate about this stuff, the like Tencent / CCP boycott stuff, otherwise honestly it'd be really tough for me to even do this job because of how many companies Tencent at least has a stake in. Like,
oh my God.
If I wanted to be like, oh yeah, I'm not touching anything that China or the CCP or Tencent has anything to do with, it would be tough to play any video games. And I mean, I'll still play games like Valorant. I haven't played Valorant much lately, but I like Valorant, and that's a Riot game, and Riot is 100% owned by Tencent. So I am aware of the level of hypocrisy that anytime I speak out against Tencent or the Chinese Communist Party or really any of those things, like that is something I will have to wear on my sleeve to be like, yeah, no, I'm not super consistent on that. However, that doesn't mean I'm not going to be honest with you guys about what the deal is. So even if you want to say not support Platinum Games, who actually made Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, as well as Vanquish and Nier Automata and Bayonetta, buying one of their games, you got to understand that Tencent's getting a piece of that, and that hurts me to say.
I mostly have a problem with just the non-competition, like the antitrust of it all, right? Like they're just becoming way too big now. And like you said, like it'll be impossible at some point to play any video games without giving them some form of financial gain.
The one thing though that is legitimately scary and legitimately a concern is the current interest that sorry, I almost said that China, that Tencent has in Crytek, which is the company who created the Far Cry series. They make the Crysis series. They make a really great game called Hunt Showdown. And Warface is their other game. But other than that, they also do things like make war game simulations and things like that NATO uses, that the US military uses. And the concern that a lot of employees at Crytek have if Tencent buys them is that effectively it will give the Chinese Communist Party access to a bunch of like data on Western military tactics by virtue of the fact that they then own the company that has all that data. So there's been a bit of a geopolitical concern about Tencent buying the company who makes Crysis because they also do a lot of military simulation stuff. And yeah, that's a little scary when socio-political things intersect with the gaming industry, but it does happen. And it kind of makes me wish that the rumors of Microsoft buying Crytek were true, because as much as Microsoft is not the squeakiest clean company in the world, they're also an American company and are probably not going to be selling American military secrets to China. So, you know.
So I was reading this article back in 2018 because you just mentioned this. So in 2018, the U.S. military, or I think it started earlier than that, they started replacing all of their Navy controllers, like their joystick controllers, with Xbox 360 controllers, because the ones they were using were like $38,000, and an Xbox controller is like $40, and more people coming like into the Navy just knew how to use an Xbox controller using it. So like, yeah, there are fundamental uses for video game components in the military, and if a Chinese Communist Party starts owning more and more video game companies, yeah, like they have direct access now to some data that shouldn't be allowed to other countries, right? Like
Yeah,
that's kind
and
of
I mean
crazy.
it sounds conspiracy theory-ish. Like
No, but like it's just
I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's like it's also accurate though.
yeah,
So
like it's
I
just like
mean,
the travel of information, right? Like it's just we
yeah.
bought a company and they just had access to this information that just wasn't supposed to be for other countries. They didn't think another country would buy it.
I think though the real question though is what's the solution here? Because ultimately, if Crytek is a private company and the people, the current majority shareholders of Crytek decide that, okay, we like this deal, we want to sell, the employees of Crytek don't have the power to just be like, no, 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 you can't do that because of these military secrets. So,
The
and
U.S.
I'm
government would come in.
that's the thing. But they're also a German company, so it's
Oh,
like, I
yeah,
mean, so would the EU be the ones who would have to step in and stop it?
pretty
And
much. Yeah,
it gets
it gets
really
tricky.
dicey at that point. And I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, I guess a little shout out to my boy Eric July. I don't necessarily want the government intruding on this industry because I don't necessarily think that the government should have their hands in absolutely everything. But when you are dealing with, I mean, I'm also in the military, so I mean, that's why I'm a terrible libertarian. But I would also not necessarily want the government to have that kind of power, but also not have national defense secrets, even not for my nation, but I mean, the states are our closest allied nation. So I think as a Canadian soldier, U.S. military secrets falling into the hands of the Chinese government are not going to be great for me and the people I work with. So I don't
Yeah.
know. It's scary though. It's and interesting because there's no clear solution or stance. Like I mean, obviously I have a position on it, but if you said, hey, like Mark the Cyborg, it's up to you. What do we do about this? I'd be like, I, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh,
So get a Western company to offer Crytek more money. That's that's kind of
yeah.
my solution. They're like, yo, whatever
Uh,
China's gonna pay more.
yeah.
That's
Good
our
luck
best
with
bet.
that. Let's end it before we get shut down. Before we even get going. So in some minor news, we have Ubisoft again talking about Skull and Bones going through just a hellacious development period. I think it's been going on for over 6 years now, and no end in sight for this game. What do you have to say about it?
So Skull and Bones was originally announced as a multiplayer only game, just kind of hot off the heels of Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Not too hot off the heels though, sort of around the time that I believe Assassin's Creed Origin was announced. And the idea was to have a multiplayer game with the naval combat of Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Assassin's Creed Rogue, which was developed, the naval combat, by Ubisoft Singapore. And Ubisoft Singapore has now been trying to make this game Skull and Bones that takes that naval combat and makes a multiplayer experience around it. This game has been soft canceled and soft rebooted like 4 times, with game directors being fired and rehired. It's abundantly clear that nobody knows what this game is, and every single person that gets brought on has a different creative vision for it. I think Sea of Thieves really ate their lunch, and they went from going, okay, just straight up naval combat multiplayer, to someone coming in and being like, nah, because Sea of Thieves, we need islands to explore. We need a lot of off the boat stuff. We need cities and towns that you can walk around and buy things. So it was revamped and moved, I think, from the Caribbean Ocean to the Indian Ocean, and they were talking about making this floating cathedral city that's like a pirate. I guess like what would be the word for it? A pirate Shangri-La or something like that, like this like hidden pirate city, and then I think someone then got put on it that was like, no, let's just make the multiplayer game. So it went back to being like a naval combat multiplayer thing. And it's possible, because it's recently entered its alpha stage, that the government of Singapore, who apparently gave this team, because essentially what they are is an independent studio that was bought by Ubisoft, and now they're Ubisoft Singapore, but they're really just like a bunch of people that were game developers in Singapore. and the Singapore government apparently gave them a bunch of assistance, and now they're demanding that a product be released. And I don't know too much about Singapore law. I do know that one guy was like caned because he spit out his gum while he was on vacation there. That was kind of a big famous thing that happened, like, I think in the 90s. I remember that being a story when I was a kid, that like this American tourist or European tourist or something spit out his gum on the street in Singapore and got arrested, and his punishment was a caning. So the Singapore law doesn't fuck around. And I think it's kind of interesting that they might be saying to Ubisoft, hey, if you don't release this pirate game that you said you were going to make in Singapore, we're going to sue you.
Wow.
And
their cinematic trailer was debuted at E3 2017.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, oh, okay, so they just doing the Assassin's Creed naval combat, but as a multiplayer game. I was like, that sounds kind of underwhelming. And I thought that it was a bit weird too that they said there wasn't going to be any hand-to-hand combat or like any ability to, fight not in boats, because one of the things that was super cool about the Assassin's Creed boat combat is that you could damage a ship, get close to it, and then board the ship, kill everyone on board and kill the captain, and then take that ship. So you'd have all of its resources, and you'd be able to...
Yeah, you pirated the ship.
Yeah, exactly. You'd then be able to send it on missions. And I think just without the option to be like, okay, this is damaged, let's board them, it's like, oh, that's a pretty key part about what made that cool. Like, I mean, the ship combat's pretty good, too. Like, that was probably the best thing about Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Rogue was the ship combat was cool. But part of what made it cool is that at any point you could go ship to ship, get the ships next to each other, and then turn it into Assassin's Creed again, because you could
boats.
Climb the mast and then jump off and assassinate the captain or something like that. Like, it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, Ubisoft just fucking up, man.
Ubisoft they're not doing good. And then they had the other thing they did this week was the Tom Clancy's X Defiant or XD, which is like, it looks like a Call of Duty game, but it's all like Fortnite looking and has Tom Clancy characters.
It's fast-paced firefights meets punk rock mosh pit. We're proud to introduce our new game, Tom Clancy's X Defiant.
Did you see anything about this? The art for it was all like edgy and cartoony looking, and it's called Tom Clancy's XD.
Yeah, it looks like it looks like Borderlands almost, but like with real characters, but like graffiti everywhere. Interesting.
Yeah, and it's like, what are they doing with this Tom Clancy license at this point? Like,
once you mentioned it to me, I saw a tweet go out. It's just like, so they're just gonna throw Tom Clancy's name on everything now. It's just, we own the right to it, so hey, Tom Clancy's Assassin's Creed.
Look, if it's made by Ubisoft, has guns, and it doesn't take place on a tropical island of some kind, it's a Tom Clancy game. Tom Clancy and Far Cry, those are our two gun games, okay? You gotta be one or the other. It's like, okay, well, we want to do a game where you play as a prehistoric caveman fighting woolly mammoths. That's Far Cry.
Just bring back Splinter Cell. Come on.
Yeah, seriously, Ubisoft, what are you doing? That's like the one thing that people are like, okay, if Ubisoft announces this and it's good, we will all pre-order it the second you announce it. The game doesn't even have to be good. It just has to look good, and it's gonna have enough Splinter Cell fans that have been hungry for a new game that will just immediately give you money. But you're refusing to do that, and
it'd have to be Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell.
Well, yeah, but I mean, everything they do is Tom Clancy now. Like I said, if it has guns, it's either Tom Clancy or Far Cry.
Coming to an E3 near you soon.
Or Watch Dogs, I guess. Watch Dog has guns also, but...
You played Watch Dogs 1 and 2. You were really obsessed with Watch Dogs when it first came out. I remember you driving around trying to hack like Wi-Fi in real life. And I'm like, what is happening?
No. Not when it first came out. Before it came out.
Yeah, before it came out.
Once it actually came out, I was like, oh, this game sucks.
You were really onto hacking Wi-Fis.
Well, see, the thing is, I wanted to. They had this. I guess what Fonz is referring to is they had this mobile game where you can link to IP addresses and then have battles with other hackers. And as you gain more points, you got more entries into these draws they were doing, where you could win stuff like cars and things like that. And I think I was on the road for EMS at the time, so I was going around in ambulances a lot, sometimes with time to kill. And I would just, be in the back of the ambulance hacking Wi-Fi points. But yeah, the promotional marketing for Watch Dogs was a lot better than the actual game. The game was poor man's GTA with some rudimentary hacking puzzle mechanics, I guess, and a story that was not at all interesting. And didn't touch Watch Dogs 2 or 3 though. So yeah,
I heard it started to pick up a lot better, but. I mean,
the 2. It looked like 2 was kind of leaning into the now the series the story is not serious at all. It's just you're these wacky hacker hipsters, and this one guy communicates with emoticons on his face and LEDs. We're so crazy, and I was just like, this game seems like all the characters in it are people who would annoy me in real life. So I just don't have any interest in it at all.
No worries. So moving on, we had EA Live. And before we talk about the big reveal, there's obviously some other games we would like to talk about. Apex Legends. Do you play it at all? Or have you ever played it?
I have not played Apex Legends in quite some time, but I've got a couple Apex wins under my belt. I've probably meant to start playing it again more once crossplay got instituted, but I think that was sort of happening around the time I was dealing with this move and everything. And really all of 2021, I've had video projects that I've been busy with, so I haven't had tons of free time to just sit around and play games, but I've definitely played a fair amount of it. I think I played with you a few times too.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I lost, probably. Like, that is, to me, Apex. I love playing Apex Legends. However, it's 20 minutes of me looting until I get shot by somebody I didn't see. And I have fun with it. But starting August 3rd, the new season Emergence will debut with a new character, the Seer, a tracker-like character similar to Bloodhound and Crypto. He seems almost too familiar to both those characters. Like, he tracks people just like Bloodhound, and he has drones just like Crypto. But they also are making changes to the maps and the ranked arena mode, which I haven't tried yet, but it sounds pretty cool. But yeah, look forward to that on August 3rd.
It's the closest to a Titanfall game that we're getting lately. Now that they've added the arena mode, though, that's like it's just like straight up deathmatch.
I believe so.
I think team deathmatch. Yeah, I mean that it's obviously it's not the Titanfall mechanics, but I think that Apex Legends might be developing into something of a stealth way to get Titanfall back, because especially with the current state of Titanfall, it's apparently not very easy to play Titanfall multiplayer on any platform. So at least maybe you can play Apex Legends Deathmatch.
Well, they've mentioned that only one person is working on Titanfall right now, and like it's being hacked to shit.
And he's just like spinning in his chair.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know what you want me to do about this.
Scribbling things in permanent marker on his arm.
Next up, we have Battlefield 2042 Portal, bringing the best of the most popular Battlefield elements into one game, including Battlefield 1942, Battlefield 3, Battlefield Bad Company 2, and Battlefield 2042. It's just going to be like a new customization to the game already, allowing you to do a lot more stuff. The videos seem kind of cool, but I didn't really get a lot from it. What did you think of it?
I thought it was a bit strange that they seemed to be focused on melee combat in it, where the German soldiers, the World War II German soldiers had bayonets, and the Americans from, I guess, like Bad Company or Battlefield 3 or something had defibrillators. And I was just like, as a medic in the army, that's not what defibrillators are for at all. Like, it would actually be very difficult to use that as a weapon. But I guess the defibrillators in Battlefield have never really played by the rules of how medicine works, so whatever. But at the same time, my concern about the Battlefield Portal is I don't know if that's just a mode like Forge and Halo for Battlefield 2042, or is that like a service that you have to pay for, where it's like if you want to make custom servers, then you can pay a monthly fee for Battlefield Portal. And they didn't say that that's what it is, but knowing what I've known about Battlefield custom servers and how EA charges for them, that once they said, oh yeah, this is a Battlefield where you can make your own rules, you can use assets from all these different older games that have been updated so that they look decent in Battlefield 2042. And I just don't know. I think it's possible I might end up playing 2042 just so I can do some streams with Disparu from Geeks and Gamers, because he's like, I actually have a person on the Geeks and Gamers team that is like a PC gamer that plays first-person shooters, and he's a big Battlefield guy, so I'm like, okay, EA might get me on this one, but I'm not like pre-ordered it yet or anything. I'm not all in at this point, but also I think Griffin Gaming has kind of turned me around on the multiplayer only Battlefield still being worth full price. He's like, well, think of how many single player only games there are that like are full price and no one complains about it. I was like, that's a pretty good point.
Yeah.
But it will still come down to, are they going to have enough modes and enough content so that it's worth the 60 American dollars or 80 Canadian dollars day one? Or is it like you're paying the full price to essentially get in on the beta, and then a year from now it'll be $30 and have all the content?
Yeah.
And
I like the fact that like you can create your own games, because like I know a lot of Blizzard games, especially, like it was all the custom content and the custom game modes that really became popular and made the games what they were. So I'm excited to see what this brings to the Battlefield community, but well, it's EA, so we'll see.
I still, the second I saw people tweeting about it though, Battlefield Portal, I was like, are they doing a crossover with Valve, and is the Portal gun going to be in Battlefield? And Shiny FX, he had a great comment when I posted that on Twitter, and he was saying, like, can you imagine having a portal and then like shooting a tank round through the portal? I was like, oh yeah, that would actually be really awesome. I hope Valve and EA get together and do Battlefield Portal. Or they'll have Battlefield Portal and then Portal Battlefield.
Something I am kind of looking forward to is Lost in Random. If you saw it, it looks very Nightmare Before Christmas or Coraline atmosphere. Action RPG from the developers of Faye, Zoink Studios.
I didn't play Faye, but yeah, no, this looked cool. And I think also because I really like the Leica Studios movies, like you were saying, like Coraline and Paranorman and Kubo and the Two Strings. That's a good one too. But the sort of not claymation, but stop motion animation.
Yeah. So you have like these crazy dice battles that use real time and turn-based tactics. It looks pretty cool. You're collecting these cards. Launches on September 10th on the Switch, PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. Definitely looks like a good Switch kind of game. Very similar to Death's Door. Like you just play as... She's a female character, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from what I noticed.
Yeah, it looked pretty cool. See what happens with that.
Yeah, I think that far off. EA is pretty good about every so often having a more, I guess, a stylized kind of indie type game, or like AA game or A game. A game that's not full-blown Battlefield, like AAA graphics. This basically looks real, but also not super low budget. Like it looks like there's something to Lost in Random. It's not like an indie game. Then again, I mean, I'm saying this after we were talking about Death's Door being made by two people and looking amazing. But yeah, I think that they had It Takes Two earlier this year that X-Ray Girl and I have streamed from time to time. That is like the best co-op game to play with. Like if you have a wife or girlfriend who plays a little bit of video games but doesn't play a lot, like a casual gamer, It Takes Two is such a good game to play together. I guess it would be a good one to play with just a friend too. But I think because you're playing as a married couple, it seems to me more like a game that you should play with like a spouse or a girlfriend or something, or if you're female with your boyfriend or husband. Not the sextism.
Yeah, no, looks pretty cool. We also had a new racing game from British developers Codemasters called Grid. Codemasters was just recently acquired by EA. Very narrative and cinematic driven, especially for a racing game, but great landscapes from around the world. Like the Buckingham Palace course looked pretty cool. All the in-game cinematics made you feel like you are part of the racing team. I'm just not a racing guy, so like, okay, another racing game. But what'd you think of it?
Yeah, so Codemasters is very, very well regarded in the racing community, the sim racing community in particular. They make the Dirt series, which is a series of rally games, and the F1 games as well. EA, I think, just recently bought them, and this will be the first game that they make for them. Grid is a series, too. I think there's been 2 Grid games or 3. Yeah. Well, apparently, I see Grid on their list. I see Grid and Grid 2, and then in 2019, there's another one that's just called Grid. I guess maybe it's a port for, I don't know. Who knows? But anyways, the one in 2022 that's coming out, the new EA one, is called Grid Legends. And I think we're getting to the point that we've got to stop adding the word Legends to things.
Yeah.
There's Legends is at the end of like every game now. And I'm just like, yo, guys, stop. Pick
League
another
of
word.
Legends.
It's the rise of for video games. Like there were so many rise ofs in over the last like 10 years, or shadow of the actually Tomb Raider's done both of those, come to think of it. But like you got the Dark Knight Rises, like Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It's like, guys, like easy with the rising. We get it.
Yeah.
You're not creative and you can't think of good titles. Especially the Planet of the Apes ones. Especially, I love those movies. I think that trilogy is great, like the newer Planet of the Apes trilogy. But the titles have always bothered me because at least the first 2, there are 2 of those in the title. It's Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And it's just,
What was the third one?
I think it's War of the Planet of the Apes. War for the Planet of the Apes. So that one, and I said 2 of them. The 2 of them had the 2 of those, and I really liked the third one too. It was really good. That was probably Andy Serkis's best performance, and he's a CGI ape. But yeah, really good film. And that's actually why I'm really looking forward to the Batman too, because I think that Matt Reeves is a very good director. And sorry, what about Grid?
You have any intention of playing another racing game?
I don't know. Probably not. I think the only racing game I'm going to play this year is Forza Horizon 5, because as I was saying, I really like the Forza Horizon game. Oh, and also we got to play Need for Speed Heat, because our friend Ryan loves Need for Speed Heat, and he's another one of our like longtime old high school friends who like was in the army with us and everything, and we would like to have him on a special episode of the podcast, and we're just like, you pick the game we're talking about, so we're going to do a special episode on Need for Speed Heat. But I believe as of right now, neither Fonz or I have played it yet, so
I downloaded it.
We have nothing to say at this time.
Yeah,
we're working on it though, Ryan.
And then finally, the big reveal, the one we've all been waiting for.
I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, as soon as that suit lit up, I was like, all right, let's go. Finally, we had Dead Space announced. They're going to do a complete remake using the Frostbite engine. Mm-hmm. This is something you mentioned, though. We play Dead Space right now on some pretty powerful PCs, and we're already like, I don't even think this game needs a remake. We're glad we're getting one, but like, it really holds up. Like, that game still fucks.
Yeah, it really does. And that it's actually my biggest concerns about this remake being a thing. Now, I'll preface off the bat for all the Dead Space fans who are super pumped about the remake that are going to hate me in a minute when I express my concerns. But I'm happy that Dead Space is coming back in any form. Because I think again, having been playing, I'm up to chapter 10 now, and I love the original Dead Space. I think it holds up incredibly well, and I think that if you have a PC, even not a very good PC, you should go on, I think it was on ModDB or Nexus, but there's a mouse aim fix mod that is really necessary because the mouse aim is not fantastic in the stock game. and just fire up Dead Space, because it plays so well to this day. And it, like, not even plays well, it looks incredible. Like, I didn't have to add a mod in order to get 4K resolution. Like, that was already there, already waiting for me. It's running at just a stupid frame rate, like more than my monitor can even handle in 4K with the graphics settings maxed. The lighting is phenomenal. It's very atmospheric, and there's honestly not a lot I think they even need to do to Dead Space, other than maybe redo some of the textures and make them a bit more modern, because it's an Xbox 360 PS3 game, so if you get really up close to some of the textures, they look a little muddy by today's standards. And I don't know, maybe add ray trace lighting, but other than that, you don't really have to do anything. My concerns is that the Frostbite engine for anything other than making first-person shooters is notoriously twitchy. Like, it's why Mass Effect Andromeda was kind of a clusterfuck.
To whom? And your goddamn father. Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
Why Anthem, also, granted that was BioWare doing it both times, but BioWare has not been able to make a third-person shooter sci-fi game with the Frostbite engine work even passably well. So I don't know that Motive is that much better and is going to be able to, like, pull off a miracle. I'm not saying they can't, but it's like, I think if they said, like, yeah, we're redoing it in Unreal Engine 5 or something like that, I'd be like, okay, well, at least that's an engine that's looking really promising. And the Unreal Engine, as much as I'm not a fan of Epic, their engine is great from everyone I've talked to who does, like, animation and things like that. It's easy to use and very scalable, so you can build something on Unreal and then run it on a phone or run it on a PS5 without a whole lot of work to bridge the gaps between those two. And I saw that they were reaching out to a bunch of YouTubers and streamers, and they made this, like, council of people to give feedback on the Dead Space remake and what they would like. And every single one of them had an almost identical tweet saying, oh yeah, I'm so thrilled. I'm a huge fan of Dead Space, and I'm looking forward to giving some input to make this Dead Space remake incredible. And I'm like, but the blueprints you already have there are pretty solid, so how much do you really need to even ask other people? And, like, I mean, granted, I'm not saying don't ask people who are fans of the game. I've never heard of any of these streamers, or any of the ones that I saw, so I don't know. For all I know, they're, like, Dead Space streamers who really know their shit. But it's just like, I don't know that you need to really do that much to Dead Space. And if you are going to do a lot to Dead Space, the idea of having to source information and not having a clear vision before you're starting and, like, putting out trailers and stuff is somewhat concerning to me. Also, I mean, it's not Visceral making it, because Visceral doesn't exist anymore, so it is a brand new team. I kind of like that they're doing a remake and not just trying to do Dead Space 4. Or not just, well, I mean, honestly, I think actually if they told me they were doing a remaster rather than a remake, I'd be like, yeah, that's probably the move. Because honestly, I think if you update the textures and the lighting, or not even do that much the lighting, but just add a ray tracing option, throw the thing on PS5 or even PS4 and Xbox One and Xbox Series, and then just, apply the mouse aim patch for the PC version and just release it next week. Like, just get all the best Dead Space modders to go in there, give them a chunk of change, and just be like, go to work. Just take what's already here and make it better. I think that you would have the best game of the year just doing that. And so it's like, oh, well, we're going to rebuild it from the ground up. I'd be like, you up for that? Can you do that? Are you going to do that well? And again, I hope that the answer is yes. Because again, I don't hate Motive. I'm definitely not crazy about the people that they've had writing, but if they're just going to take the story of Dead Space and redo it, I don't really have to worry too much about the writing and the script. And I mean, like Star Wars Squadrons was pretty good, like, from a gameplay standpoint, if you totally ignore the one-dimensional characters and honestly a plot that I don't even remember. It was so forgettable. I think there was some kind of weapon. It wasn't a Death Star, but that's how much I remember. It wasn't even that long ago that I played it. But as far as VR Star Wars flight sims go, it's it's the best thing that's ever existed. So it's like, I mean, they've got some things going for them. So I can't really say, oh yeah, I don't trust these guys. But at the same time, I don't know that they've got the chops to really overhaul Dead Space and do it well when what's already there, like the skeleton of the game that exists now, is so good that I don't really think you need to do that much to it.
So in a follow-up interview, they did mention that they are gonna improve the story somehow, which like the story is pretty cool the way it is. Maybe they'll incorporate elements from the anime we talked about last week, change some things about the characters, the gameplay mechanics. The one thing I was hearing in an interview was that they have all of the storyboards and all the game mechanics they initially wanted to do, or Visceral wanted to do with Dead Space, but couldn't do because of limitations on the technology of their time. So they're hoping to incorporate a lot more things that Visceral wasn't able to do, but they set the foundation up. We'll see how they do it. Like you said, Motive only has 2 games under their belt right now: Battlefield, Star Wars Battlefront 2, and Star Wars Rogue Squadron.
Oh, just Squadrons. Rogue Squadron was the N64.
Oh, sorry, Star Wars Squadrons. Yeah. So we'll see. Like, just because someone gives you a blueprint of what to do doesn't mean they can accomplish it well. But
a PTSD flashback of Game of Thrones season 8.
there we go. Right? Like, hey, I'll tell you how to get to the ending, but if you don't know what you're doing, you just don't know what you're doing.
It's like, oh, don't worry, guys. They have the blueprint of exactly what George wanted to do. It'd be like, I mean, maybe.
And like we said, no release date, so it was one of those CGI trailers. But honestly, it was a really good CGI trailers.
Yeah, it looked
cut
very
off
good.
their limbs, that kind of flashes. I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah. It was cool, and then the suit lighting up, and I hope they like that is a key component. Like, do not put a HUD in this game. Like the fact that everything you need to see is on his suit already is good enough. But we're gonna have to wait and see on this. Hopefully, some more news comes out in the following years, because I don't see this game releasing before 2022, 2023.
Yeah, and which will definitely give us time to conclude our current playthroughs of the Dead Space games before that. Speaking of which, I think I gotta send you the Wii ROM for Dead Space Extraction, because which actually I think I have on PS3. I just have no idea where my move not the controllers, actually, because I do have the controllers because you use the same ones for PSVR, but the PS3 camera to use the move things. And Extraction it's like an on-rail shooter, but that's the only Dead Space spin-off, and it doesn't have a PC version that you can use the mouse, so that's the one we'll have to find. Although, if modders are out there somewhere and you want to make Dead Space Extraction for like VR headsets, I will buy that.
We're finishing up for today, but as always, it's not be good, scrubs.
It's get good, scrubs.